In this video, I'm going to try 3 methods to make people disappear. I'll show you how to remove crowds to go from this to this. So recently I visited the Buro-in Temple in Hawaii, which is a popular spot for tourists due to its picturesque views, lush gardens, koi ponds, and of course, the ability to ring a very large bell. I knew it would be crowded, so I wanted to experiment with 3 tricks to remove crowds from photos. So here's what the crowd looked like in real time. So the first method to remove crowds is to use an ND filter so that you can create a long exposure whereby people blur out of the photo. The equipment needed for this method are a tripod or a stable surface and an ND filter. So what's an ND filter? An ND filter, short for neutral density filter, is used to control the amount of light entering into the camera's lens. It evenly reduces the intensity of all wavelengths of light. ND filters come in various levels of density, usually measured in stops. Each stop of density corresponds to halving the amount of light that passes through the filter. So a 1-stop ND filter reduces the light by half, a 2-stop ND filter reduces it by a quarter, and so on. Some ND filters are adjustable, allowing you to dial in the desired density by rotating the filter. So the goal of using an ND filter is so that we can capture a long exposure. Okay, well, I failed in trying to test this method. I couldn't try it out because I went in bright daylight, and I couldn't get a long enough exposure even with my ND filter. It just didn't cut out enough light. Now, the longest I could get with my ND filter was a 2-second exposure. Here's an example shot with a 2-second exposure. Still lots of people in my picture, but you can sort of see the effect in action. So this man happened to be walking when I took the picture, and you can see he sort of turned into the flash and has a trail behind him. If the exposure was long enough, he might have blurred right out of the picture. So since I failed in person, let's try to recreate the effect under a controlled environment and make things invisible. So I've got my temple in the background. I'm going to configure my camera so that I can have longer shutter speeds. So the first thing I want to do is to take my camera out of auto ISO and specifically set a low ISO. So let's say 100. Next, I want to have a narrow aperture, that is a bigger f number, which lets in less light and again allows me to have a longer shutter speed. So now without an ND filter, you can see that the slowest shutter speed I can get without overexposing my image is 0.5 seconds, which is not nearly enough time to make people disappear. So now I'm going to put on the ND filter. I have a variable ND filter, so you can see that as I rotate the filter, the exposure changes. You might notice that there's a color cast with an ND filter, and yes, I am using a very cheap ND filter, but even high-end ND filters will leave a color cast. So I guess that's one thing to keep in mind while using this method. Anyway, now with the ND filter, I can get a shutter speed of 8 seconds before the image becomes overexposed. Okay, so let me start my exposure. Okay, so now while I take a picture, I'm going to have my stick man walk in front of the temple to simulate a tourist. And here's the result. A great big blurry mess. Alright, so here comes another tip. Use a self-timer or a remote shutter to start a long exposure to prevent camera shake from when you press the shutter button down. Alright, let's try that again with a 2-second self-timer. And let me start my exposure and bring in my tourist. Ooh, ah. Alright, now let's see what our final image looks like. And ta-da! Our tourist disappeared and didn't show up in the final image. On to method number 2. So method 2 requires a little bit of pre-planning and Photoshop. So of course you already know that you can use Photoshop to do fine photo manipulation to edit out people. But you know what? I'm not skilled at Photoshop and I'm just looking for a quick and easy method. So stick with me here. Now the trick with this method is that you need to take 15 to 20 photos with 20 to 30 seconds between each shot, depending on how fast people are moving throughout your scene. If people linger in the same spot, then you may need to take more photos or at longer intervals between shots. Alright, so I took a bunch of photos and I imported my batch of photos and put them in a folder. Now let's go to Photoshop and select File, Scripts, Statistics. And then we're going to select Use Folder and press Browse and browse the folder containing your photos. And then I want to make sure to select Median Stack Mode. And also make sure that attempt to automatically align source images is checked. So now what this is going to do is remove things that are not constant throughout all the images. And voila! There's our final image without people. Pretty cool. Our third and final method to remove crowds also uses Photoshop, but again, it's super simple. So I just recently learned of the Remove tool in Photoshop, which uses artificial intelligence, which is of course all the rage now. So the Remove tool can be found grouped in the Spot Healing Brush toolset. And if you don't see it, then you probably need to update your Photoshop to at least version 24.5. Okay, let's give the Remove tool a shot. I'm going to find the photo with the least amount of people in it. And then I select the Remove tool. And now I just paint over what I want to get rid of. So you can see it's not perfect, but in some cases it can do a pretty good job. So the first two methods won't work to remove people who stayed still throughout the time you were shooting. So you could use one of the prior two crowd removal methods and just use the Remove tool to touch up any unwanted subjects that remain. And there you have it, 3 pretty simple ways to eliminate crowds from photos without having to be a magician. And please subscribe if you want to continue to experiment along with me to figure out more photo and video tips and tricks. Bye!